Hello everyone, and welcome to my session 6 presentation. This is the second part of the test creation triangle and the part 2 of my validity and reliability presentation. Again, if you remember, I said if a test is reliable, in order for a test to be valid, it has to be reliable. Similarly, if a test is valid, you can assume it is reliable. Here I go. I'm going to start the presentation off with just a little refresher on reliability. And this part here is about types of reliabilities. Remember, the major type is test-retest, where you give the same test to the same group twice and then compare the results. Naturally, nothing significant can happen in between. This is usually not done with classroom tests because of the time involved, and your kids would mutiny. Alternate form is something that you should just understand. Say the SATs, they have to show that their SATs that they give in October, the SATs they give in May, the SATs they give in December are similar, so that they get similar results. So a student taking it in October should get pretty much the same results on a different form of the test taken in May. So it's same test taken twice and then comparing the results. Not taken twice, but the same test taken different forms of the same test and comparing results. Internal consistency is what the large-scale test makers use rather than giving the test twice to the same group. They use statistical procedures to determine the reliability. Are the items acting homogeneously? And the advantage of this is that it only requires one test administration. The fourth test type of reliability isn't a reliability of a test, but it's a reliability of the scoring of the test. It's when two people are grading the same subjective test, like the essay portion of the ELA, and then they compare the results. So that's inter-rater reliability. So in talking about validity, again, a lot of us throw the term around, this test isn't valid for my kids. Well, the validity of a test really has nothing to do with the people taking it. It has to do with what you have taught. Does this test cover what it's meant to measure? So if you taught a lesson on the causes of the Civil War, are your questions aligned with that? So is it testing what it's meant to ever? If a test doesn't show evidence of validity, then it's useless. Now, Popham talks about the inferences you make from the results of the test. To him, that's what validity is. Can you make valid inferences based on your test results about what those students know? So that is a different concept than what most people talk about when they say this test is valid. But you'll see more and more it's about the inferences you can make, and that really makes sense to me. So that I would agree with Popham. Again, this is using bullseyes to show what validity is. You can see that in this upper left corner, those scores are reliable, but they're not hitting the mark, so they wouldn't be valid. And this here, the bullseye, hitting the bullseye is valid. I don't believe this scatter here could be valid. I think valid has to be in the center. And one of the things we will find out about validity, and when we talk about validity, we talk about, does it represent the curriculum aim? In other words, if a state assessment is valid, we have to know if it's going to cover the content, the Common Core standards that we're supposed to teach. And can we make accurate inferences about what students know? So I like to use this little diagram here to show what validity looks like. Say this rectangle represents the whole curriculum or the unit you're teaching. You can see that if your questions are just zeroing in on this part of the curriculum that I have these dots in, that it really isn't valid. You're not covering the whole curriculum that you taught. So you would say that that test is not valid. Now, if you spread those questions out, so you're covering more of the curriculum, you can see that now these questions are becoming much more valid because they're covering more of the unit. Now, you can see in this instance, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 questions. These are like my quizzes. So does validity increase when you ask more questions? Well, what do you think? Naturally, if I did my quiz on reliability and validity and had 50 questions, the test would be much more valid, and therefore it would be much more reliable. So you can see by this diagram what having more questions covers more of the curriculum or unit and makes it more valid. This is really the only type that you will need to concern yourself about. If you're creating tests of your own, you only need to worry about content-related validity. Does my test assess or cover the content that I taught? How do we determine content-related validity? Well, the first thing is creating your test with care, and that's the most important part. The second part is external review. Now, the large-scale test makers have panels that review the questions and review the test and say, yes, this test covers what we consider to be the content that you're assessing. Now, when I received my doctorate, when I did my dissertation, I created a survey on teacher teaching styles based on the learning styles of the done and done learning style model. In order to assess the validity of my test, I had to share it with experts in the field. So I gave my test to 4 or 5 different people who are learning style experts and said, excuse me, do you believe these questions cover the learning styles of the done and done model? Excuse me. The other type of validity is criterion-related validity, which explains how the scores from one test correlate with scores from another. In other words, if I wanted to see if my learning style survey or teaching style survey had criterion-related validity or concurrent validity, I would have compared it to another teaching styles survey, but there weren't any, so I couldn't do that. Another kind of criterion-related validity is predictive validity, and that is using a test like the SATs to predict success in college, or using a kindergarten screening test to predict success in kindergarten. So that is what we call predictive validity. Popham uses concurrent validity a little differently, so I'm not really going to go into that, but I am focusing on the definition that is in Spencer and Cohen, and I'm not going to talk about what Popham does. That'll only confuse you. I like this. I like my cartoon. A few more like that, and I'll be ready for Gamblers Anonymous. Now, come on. So let's talk about determining criterion validity. Predictive validity is when test makers compare their test scores with future performance. This is what's called the quick and easy method of concurrent validity, and it's taking, say for kindergarten, you take your kindergarten screening test and then compare the student scores with how they do in kindergarten. So that's pretty simple. But with the SATs, how do you predict how somebody will do in school? Well, typically they only do it with freshmen, and they in the SATs predictive validity, it only predicts about 25% of the success that students have, or only accounts for 25% of the success a student has in its first year of college. So I would say there's some use in the SAT of predicting success in freshman year, but there really is none for predicting success in college overall. So that's what we talk about when we talk about criterion-related validity. It's predictive validity and concurrent validity. There's also a type of validity we like to call consequential validity, and there are two different ways of looking at consequential validity. One is, does the assessment promote the learning? In other words, is there some consequence to the assessment? Many people consider portfolio assessment, which again some don't consider it a type of assessment, more of a collection. But portfolio assessment does enhance the learning. So that in terms of this type of consequential validity, would have consequential validity. Performance-based assessment normally is designed to do this. Portfolio does it, but a performance assessment actually, as you're creating the performance, say in an art piece or a musical piece, you're actually learning from creating the assessment. So that would be a type of consequential assessment. Again, Popham has a different kind of take on this. He talks about consequential validity as having some kind of effect. What kind of effect does it have on the overall outcome of taking this test? Is it good for society? And that's the way Popham looks at it. The last thing I wanted to talk about was accommodations and modifications. I mentioned these in an earlier session. I believe in session 2 we talked about accommodations and modifications. There are a list of them in Cohen and Spencer. I believe in chapter 2, I believe there are a list of accommodations and modifications. And one of the things that you seldom see test creators do is to create, or is to list and tell you what kind of effect these accommodations have on reliability and validity. So again, just to review, accommodations are changes in format, response, setting, timing, or scheduling, but no adaptations or changing to the test itself. So it's giving kids extra time, separate location, but it's not changing the test. A modification is actual changes to the test, doing half of them or doing a different test altogether. So my comment here is that few test developers demonstrate the effects of these accommodations on reliability. That's what I consider something. When we do give accommodations and accommodations, are we affecting the reliability or the validity of the test? Something to think about. As I say here, there's an extensive list accommodations in chapter 5, on page 5 in chapter 1. Okay, so it's chapter 1 of Cohen and Spencer. That chapter is in week 1 handouts. So that's it for this little short session on validity. There will be a quiz this week on validity and reliability. Again, you can do that and get help